Hello everybody, this is Dr. Aparna from Anurag Group of Institutions, CVSR College of Engineering. Today we are going to learn about energy. Tell me, what do you do every day from morning till night? I'm sure you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you take a bath, you have your breakfast, you go to the college, you listen to your lecturers, you talk to your friends, you take down notes, you do your assignments, you eat your lunch, you get back home, you watch television, sit in front of the internet and chat with your friends on Facebook. I'm sure you all do that, yes? And then finally you hit the bed, okay? So, don't you think you need a lot of energy to do all this work? Yes? So, we are going to study about energy today. Okay, let me take another example. I'm sure your mother does a lot of work at home, doesn't she? I'm sure she follows her own pattern. Early in the morning, she must be getting up, cooking for you, packing your things and seeing that you are sent off to your colleges. And if she is a working woman, don't you think she works a lot more? So she needs a lot more energy to do her work, is it not? Well, as I said, what do you think energy is then? Energy is the ability to do work, don't you think? Well, energy is of different kinds. You know, we keep listening about energy. Sometimes you must have heard about positive energy and negative energy. Yes, people who have positive energy make a lot of friends. People who look at life in a positive way are always happy. People who have negative energy, obviously, they always look at the negative side of life, is it not? But then we are not really looking at the mental capabilities of a human being. We are not talking about positive energy in a human being, neither the negative energy in a human being. What we are looking at is energy in its simplest form. As I said, there are different types of energies, yes? Chemical energy, for instance. What does chemical energy do? It is stored in your food as well as the fuel, is it not? What about mechanical energy? All the ceiling fans in your house, they run on mechanical energy. Electrical energy, you must be watching your television with the help of electrical energy. So these were all the different energies that I've been trying to tell you about. We are going to learn about energy in its simplest way. This lesson, Energy, was written by Isaac Yudovich Asimov. He is popularly also known as Isaac Asimov, who was born on 2nd January 1920. He was a very prolific writer and he was also a professor of biochemistry at the Boston University. He has written many books on science fiction. He has written and edited more than 500 books and about 90,000 letters and postcards. Now, isn't that a lot of work? Well, he was a great man. Isaac Asimov wrote mysteries and fantasies. His most famous series is the Foundation series. He also wrote the Galactic Empire series and he also wrote the Robo series. Later on, he integrated both, that is, the Galactic Empire series and the Robo series, and brought them under the Foundation series. As I said earlier, he also wrote a lot of short stories, and among them, The Nightfall, which he wrote in the year 1964, became one of the most popular short stories ever written in science fiction. By the way, he also wrote for teenagers. He called them the Lucky Star series and he wrote this under the pen name Paul French. Now, let us learn more about Isaac Asimov. Isaac Asimov wrote mysteries, fantasies and non-fiction. The lesson Energy is actually a non-fiction. The best thing about him is when he is talking to you about terms of science, he goes way back into history. He starts talking about the ancients and he tells about the scientists who invented or coined the names for scientific terms. He also goes to the etymology of the words and he also gives us how these scientific terms should be pronounced. For instance, this particular lesson that I am going to do with you today, he is going to explain about all the young scientists who gave the name energy, who gave the name potential energy, kinetic energy, and so on and so forth. The most famous books that he has written are the Understanding Physics and also a Guide to Science, which helps the students to understand the terms of science easily. Now, to tell you something more interesting about it, about Isaac Asimov, he became the president of the American Humanist Association, and did you know that an asteroid 5020 is named after him? A crater in the planet Mars is also named after him. A New York elementary school is also named after him. And one Isaac Asimov Literary Award is named in his honor. So he was really a great man. Everybody considers energy so important today. Nowadays, we keep using this word energy again and again and again and again and again. Is it not? As I said earlier, when your mother asks you to do something, you would say, oh my God, I'm so tired. I have no energy to do any work. I have this problem at home. I asked my daughter to do some work and she says, I have no energy, Amma. I really had to sit through a lot of classes today. I can't possibly do any work. I feel the same. Every Monday, I'm raring to go because on Sunday, I really relax. I love to go back to my college. I love to interact with my students. But by the time it is Saturday, I really get tired and I'm worn out. I really don't seem to have energy to do any work. I really look forward for Sunday right from Friday itself. So what is energy? The more work we do, the more tired we become. The more work we have to do, the more energy we need, don't you? You must be thinking that this word energy was there from ancient times. But no, not at all. Did you know that this word was coined just 200 years back? And an English scientist called Thomas Young actually coined it and used it for the first time in 1807. The word energy comes from Greek word energia, which means work inside. So, what is energy? Energy is work inside. The ability to do a work is energy. Lifting a heavy object is energy. Work. Lifting a light object is also work. Lifting a paper like this is also work, is it not? But then when you lift a heavy object, you need more energy. But if you were to lift a light object like a paper, you hardly need energy, is it not? So now, it's the same thing. If you have to push a heavy object, you need a lot of energy. But if you have to push a light object, you need less energy. That is common sense, is it not? Because we know that a word like energy exists, we use it. So what is energy? Energy is work inside. But unfortunately, the ancients did not know that a word like energy existed. Of course, they knew that if they had to do work, they had to put an effort. If they put an effort, they would get tired. They were always looking for means of doing work without getting tired. But then, can anybody do work without getting tired? I don't think so. Even if you have to sit in front of the TV and watch your serials, I'm sure you get tired after some time. Don't you think your eyes start paining? Your eyes are doing work. Even to blink your eyes, you need energy. Okay? But then the ancient Greeks thought that things could be done with strange powers, you know. They have these wonderful stories of musicians who would play beautifully, wherein the stones would start dancing by themselves and start building themselves into a huge wall. I'm sure you must have all heard of the Arabian Nights, yes? I'm sure you must have seen Arabian Nights on television also. I'm sure you must have heard of Aladdin. He had this wonderful magical lamp which would do anything for him. No, not the lamp. The genie of the lamp did everything for him. He just wanted a castle. The genie would come out of the lamp and in the twinkling of an eye build a beautiful castle for Aladdin. But then the genie did all this work with magic. He never used effort. He never wasted his energy. Therefore, we cannot do work with magic. We do work when we use our energy. It is not surprising that the ancient people made up these tales. Work was so difficult. They really got tired, and therefore they relied more on these tales, and they thought that there was something called magic that could really, do wonders for them. But then nobody really saw magic happening. Nobody really saw castles being built in the fraction of a second. So they were forced to do some work or the other. Is it not? The same thing here in modern days. Unless and until we do work, we can't do anything. Unless and until we don't expend our energy, no work is done. Is it not? Now, you must be thinking that all living beings do a lot of work. People do a lot of work, right? I am sitting here and I am talking to you. Am I not doing some work? I cook in the house. Am I not doing some work? So everybody, every one of us is doing some work or the other. But then animals also do a lot of work. Donkeys, they carry heavy loads. They take loads from one place to another. They do a lot of work. Horses, they carry people from one place to another. They do a lot of work. What about cattle? All the oxes, they definitely plow the fields. So in one way, all living beings are doing work. That is exactly what we all think, don't you? But then, have you ever realized that non-living things can also work? Now, that's surprising, is it not? Yes, I'll tell you. A big gush of wind can move a rock and the rock starts moving, yes? Or a huge tide can, take the ship ahead or even blow the ship away, yes? Or the river current can move rafts down the stream. Now, you would be thinking that how can air, how can a rock and how can water really do this work? Still air, still water, still rocks, they don't do any work, but moving air, moving rocks and moving water do a lot of work. So, when a non-living thing is in motion, it is doing work. We can call it motion energy, yes, but then we had an English scientist, Lord Kelvin, who coined the word kinetic energy. Kinetic in Greek means motion, okay? So he said that anything, any non-living thing, if it starts moving, it starts gaining energy. The faster an object moves, the more work it does. I'll give you a very simple example. I'm sure you must have used a hammer in your house. Yes? Now, what do you use a hammer for? To move a nail into the wall. Okay? Now, there is a hammer. You put the nail against the wall and start tapping it. If you tap it lightly, do you think the nail will push straight into the wall? No, it takes some time. But if you were to move this hammer rapidly and with a greater force, the nail moves faster into the wall. Yes? Now, supposing you had a bigger and a larger hammer and you tapped it, do you think the nail would go further in? Yes, it does. So, if an object is bigger, like say a bigger hammer, it does more work. It is capable of tapping the nail further into the wall faster. So, that is what kinetic energy is. I'll give you another example of kinetic energy that has happened in the recent past. Do you remember the tsunami that hit the coast of Japan, its town Sendai? Do you remember how the waves and the wind really destroyed the entire town? Well, that is a very good example of kinetic energy, is it not? All this while we were talking about non-living things doing some work, and when they did work, that was kinetic energy. But then there is something called potential energy also. Sometimes even motionless objects are capable of doing work. I'll give you one example. For instance, there is a huge rock that is on the edge of a cliff. It's been lying like that for many years, and one fine day there is a huge gust of wind and it blows this rock off the cliff. and the rock starts falling down. As it starts falling down, it keeps gaining more and more speed. That is, it starts gaining more and more kinetic energy. Once it falls down, it smashes something and it does its work, right? So, what does it mean? To start with, the rock had some energy. That energy is called as potential energy. This term potential energy was coined by a Scottish scientist called J.M. Rankin. He said that any object which is capable of doing work has potential energy, just as the rock sitting at the edge of a cliff. This is one example. I'll give you another example from your everyday life. I'm sure as youngsters you must have jumped off walls and jumped off benches in your classes, is it not? When you jump from a higher wall, you fall down and you really get hurt. But if you were to jump from a chair or a desk, would you get hurt? No. So what does it mean? It means the higher you are above the ground, the more likely it is for an object to gain kinetic energy. The lower you are to the ground, the closer you are to the ground, the less kinetic energy the object possibly will have when it falls down, is it not? So, to start with, if the object is really high up there, it has more potential energy because it gains more kinetic energy when it is falling down. But if the object is very close to the ground, it does not really have that much of potential energy to start with, because it does not have that much of time to speed up as it hits the ground to do some work. Now, I would rather give you an example of a rubber band. Okay? Take this rubber band. Does it have any energy in it? No. It has potential energy in it, but we can convert this energy into kinetic energy. I am sure you must have done this at class. I am sure you must have done what I am doing very often when you were very young. Now, you put a paper like this insert it into the rubber band and just leave it. So, you have potential energy which has got converted into kinetic energy, is it not? So, I hope you have understood what is kinetic energy and what is potential energy. You know, the ancient people would have been puzzled if anybody spoke to them of energy. They knew that they were doing a lot of work. They knew that they were getting tired. They knew that because they were putting a lot of effort, they were getting tired. But they did not know the term energy. They did not know the term kinetic energy either. They knew that moving water could do work. They knew that winds could do work. Moving air could do work, as I said. But then they never knew that this was called as kinetic energy. And of course, I am sure they did not know what potential energy was. They knew that a rock sitting at the top of a cliff is capable of doing work. If there is a big gust of wind, they knew that the rock would start falling down, and it is possible that the rock can do some work. It has some potential energy. They had a notion of what energy was, but then having notion about something is not enough. You have to understand science more accurately, more clearly. It needs a lot of understanding. For science, you have to take the right measurements, and you have to see how these measurements fit together. This understanding of energy did not come till modern times. The ancients did not really understand energy, potential energy, or kinetic energy. I am sure you have now understood the entire lesson. I have really used a lot of energy and tried to explain you in the best way possible. And I am sure you have really expended a lot of energy in listening to this. Thank you very much.